All right, this has been an absolutely wild day for the Mariners. So much so that we're going to have to do at least 2 episodes to cover it all. First up, we're going to talk about this insane trade with the Giants that sends Robbie Ray to San Francisco and brings back Mitch Haniger as well as Anthony DeSclafani. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I mean, what can you say other than chills? Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, January 5th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Gametime. That's right. Ahoy, boat people, or hello, boat person, whatever it is. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On. That's LCKDON for $20 off your first purchase. And thank you so much for making us your first listen after, again, very wild day for the Mariners. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. So, the Mariners are making moves today, folks. We have 2 trades to talk about today, but we're going to break those up into separate episodes. In this episode, we're going to talk about the wild trade between the Mariners and the Giants. Mitch Haniger is back, folks. That's the headline. I mean, the other headline is, Robbie Ray is going to San Francisco, of course, but Mitch Haniger is back. Yay, Mitch. The Mariners are also getting veteran pitcher Anthony DeSclafani to help them even out the money changing hands. So let me paint the picture here for you guys. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I was kind of deep into this stuff today beforehand, about an hour before the trade was officially announced by Jeff Passan, and then a few minutes later, the Mariners themselves. I got a text around, I don't know, noon my time. It's 3:44 now my time, for context, saying Mitch Haniger is back. And I'm like, what? And then I tell Colby, and I'm like, hey, we're going to need to, maybe go on standby here for doing a show, because we were initially planning on doing Fan Fiction Friday. Then there were some interesting rumors that came out yesterday about like Carlos Santana and Dylan Cease. But now, Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander, they made our show sheet for us. And they've given us so much content that, again, we're going to have to do 2 shows. Also, because we're kind of waiting to hear the final details on the whole Luke Raley, Jose Caballero thing that Ken Rosenthal
could look a lot different than it looks right now. So we'll just wait for that one to become official.
It could.
It might not, but also it could.
But also, if it's just Luke Raley for Jose Caballero, chills.
Woodshed.
Chills. Yeah,
my word is woodshed.
DiPoto did it again.
Sure.
Yeah. Woodshed. Yeah. All right, so tell us your reaction here, Coley. This has been a lot. This has been a lot to process.
It's been a lot of fun, though. I must say, when Jerry transacts, it's always fun.
This is a lot better than trading Jared Kelenic for
sure.
What he traded him for.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, start right at the top. Like, it's always a good thing to acquire Mitch Haniger. Like, even if it doesn't make any sense on paper, I'm always going to be a fan of acquiring Mitch Haniger.
It's like we talked about the other day with James Paxton when we had the whole Paxton discussion. It's like, even if it doesn't make sense, I'm biased. I love James Paxton. I love Mitch Haniger. I'm in. It's just
the shut up and take my money gif.
Like when I got that text, I was like, awesome.
I don't need to know anything else. But I
cool.
love it already. But obviously, after that kind of wears off a little bit and you're excited because, we all love Mitch. You have to take stock of a couple things, and that is that Mitch is a flawed player who is older, has an injury history, and has a contract. And the Mariners are a team that we know is working on a very tight budget. So, of course, my second thought is like, okay, like, how are they going to make this work money-wise? Because they can't take all of Haniger's contract in this deal and just have that, be it. Because that would be terrible. Like that's you pretty much eat up half at most, or at least half of your remaining budget on this guy who may not play 60 games. So there was some concern there after the initial, yay, we got Mitch back, and then you kind of go through all the iterations, and it's okay. Are they taking on Haniger's money to maybe acquire also like Lamont Wade Jr.? And so they're kind of using Haniger's money to lessen the prospect costs there, or are they, is maybe they're trading Ty France in this deal, and that kind of lessens the money that Haniger has there. So you kind of go through all of this, and then of course, because it wouldn't be Jerry DiPoto without throwing everybody a curveball, it's none of those things. It's instead essentially a salary swap of two players going to the Mariners for Robbie Ray, and about $2.5-3 million, give or take, coming from the Giants to Seattle, which will come into play. That is an important number, because the end effect is that neither team adds any money to their 2024 payroll. So the Mariners have acquired, Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani, two guys who could help them in 2024, for a guy who wasn't going to help them in 2024 until at least July, probably August, if at all. So it's the buildup is fun, and it's awesome because you're excited to have Mitch back. And then once you get the deal and you look at the deal as it is, it's a pretty solid deal for the Mariners, and it's not a bad deal for the Giants either. I think there's a really good possibility this works well for both teams, but obviously it checks a couple big boxes off for the Mariners. It adds depth in places they needed to have depth. It could potentially add impact if you can get both of these guys back to what they were in 2021. So there's a lot to unpack here. It's a fun deal. There are, Mariners legend coming in. There is, obviously Robbie Ray's not a Mariner legend, but he's very underrated to his contributions to the Mariners last year. And I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it here. Robbie Ray's healthy last year, the Mariners win the American League West. And I think they do it by a couple of games. Like, his loss in his first start was so impactful. So, I'm bummed to see Robbie go, but I think when you look at the deal in totality and understand what the Mariners are working with, it's a really savvy move by Jerry. And I think it's going to work out just fine for the Mariners.
So Haniger in adjusted salary is due $16 million, and DeSclafani is due $12 million. So that's 28. They trade Robbie Ray's $24 million, and they're getting, I think, $3 or $4 million back from the Giants. So it's a even swap of money. The other interesting thing here is Robbie Ray had a no trade clause for 2023 and 2024 that converted into a $1 million trade assignment bonus at the new year. And there you go. He gets traded just 5 days into the new year. They also are not going to be on the hook for Robbie's $25 million in 2026 because, let's be real about it, with the injury and all that stuff. He's going to accept that player option at the end of this year. So from the Giants. So they dumped $25 million flat in 2026 salary. They're also dumping, when you include Mitch Haniger's player option for 2025, which he's also likely going to accept, that's $17.5 million. They save about $7.5 million in that regard as well. So they save quite a bit of money, future money, with this deal on top of what they've done here for 2024, which, if you assume that they had $17-ish million to play with heading into today for 2024 payroll alone, they still have that. So there's still the possibility for more to happen here with the Mariners, which is very exciting.
I would say it's strongly likely that you're going to add more.
Well, and then it seems like they're closing in on adding a quality player who's making the league minimum.
We'll see. I don't want to jinx it.
Don't want to jinx it, but it seems like they're on the verge of doing that. So if they are able to push that across the finish line, that fills another hole. That's one of your outfielders that you needed. You get Haniger, which is your other outfielder. So your outfielder, your outfield situation is pretty much set after the Rayleigh deal. If you're able to finalize that. So what do you do with the money? That's going to be very interesting. We'll get into that at a later time, at a later date. But right now, let's keep on talking about this trade. Let's talk about how Haniger fits, what our expectations are for him, how the Mariners might deploy him in terms of, the outfield, DH, especially with Mitch Garver's presence, all that stuff. in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we are talking about this Mitch Haniger, Robbie Ray, Anthony DeSclafani trade, and let's talk about Haniger, right? Mitch is back. That's awesome. Like we talked about, we're biased. We love Mitch Haniger. He's a Mariners legend in our minds. So you tell us that Mitch Haniger is back. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. We're excited about that. But now let's talk about the actual practicality of it. How does Mitch Haniger fit on this roster, especially now that you have Mitch Garver, who is expected to be your full-time DH, at least as things are currently constructed. How does Mitch, with his injury history, fit?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say Mitches be crazy.
Mitches do be crazy.
Because now we have two Mitches.
We have
our
Mitches.
rebound Mitch and our original Mitch. So
we all we need to do now is trade for Mitch Keller.
I mean, like
we're golden.
Three Mitches.
Good
Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Haniger, obviously the fit is interesting here. Ignoring the other trade that may or may not happen, sounds like it's going to happen in some form or fashion. We just don't know the details. Haniger is a guy who you can't really bank on anything from him, right? We know about his injury history. We're well aware of this. So there's really not a lot to go over in that regard, but you can't bank on him to do anything. And like you said, the DH at bats are going to be somewhat limited. Again, Garver can catch a day or two. He can play first base maybe for a day, and he's going to just take days off in general. So there will be some DH at bats available to Mitch Haniger, but he's going to have to play the field, and he's going to have to play right field. And we know about Mitch's defense; it's not what it used to be. He's below average firmly at this stage of his career.
And he's had a back thing this year and all that. So odds are the defense is probably worse than when we last saw Mitch.
Probably Teoscar Hernandez ish.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to play a little bit. Now, the Mariners can do things to help him there. Like they can DH him. They can move him to left field. That's a little bit easier to play than right field. Less ground to cover, at least. It is also worth noting, though, that, having Julio Rodriguez, who took a huge step forward defensively in center field, that's going to help, hide a little bit of things that Mitch is going to struggle with. So that will also help him too. But you just really can't count on anything from Haniger. You just have to kind of whatever he gives you as a bonus. So if you get 85 games from him, then that's, 85 more than you should be banking on. So I think the idea here is that he probably, as things stand right this second, he's one of your three starting outfielders. He's in right field opening day, Canzone's in left. If this other trade goes through as it's being reported, then there's a pretty good possibility that Haniger is your fourth outfielder and that he will not strictly platoon, but that he will get opportunities against lefties for either Rayleigh or Canzone, or he'll play matchup against righties that the Mariners feel he has a favorable matchup against. So he'll move into more of a traditional like fourth outfield role. So I think that's the idea here. It's not to count on Mitch to play 150 games for you. It's to use him when we feel like there's a matchup advantage that he can take advantage of. And if we need to give Luke Rayleigh a day off against a tough lefty, if we need to give Canzone a day off against a tough lefty, or if we think that, Mitch Haniger is really good at hitting sliders and this guy has a good slider, so we're going to put him in instead of, Garver, who's struggling against sliders. Like, I think there's a way if Haniger were to be healthy all year, which again, we know, but if he were to be relatively healthy all year, I think you can still get him comfortably 350 plate appearances, give or take, and see where it goes from there. Because obviously, if he's 2021 Mitch Haniger again for like any stretch of time, you want that guy in your lineup basically every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how you use Mitch. It's kind of a fourth outfielder. It's kind of first bat off the bench type. And then he's going to get starts. He's going to get plenty of playing time. It's just he's not going to be. I don't think they're requiring him to be their everyday right fielder, and that's how they're planning on using him. I think they'll be smarter about it.
I think that's what Rayleigh is. Rayleigh's probably your everyday right fielder,
right, or left fielder, depending on what they want to do with Canzone and blah blah blah.
Wherever
and maybe they go out and they get another guy, another
position.
outfielder.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. So Mitch had a fractured forearm that kind of derailed his season. He landed on the 60-day IL. He was able to make it back towards the end of the year with the Giants, played a few games, but then had a back thing and was unable to finish the season because of that. So, it's the same story with Mitch. I mean, it's only been a year since we last saw Mitch. I know it kind of feels like it's been longer than that, but it really hasn't been that long. The other, thing with this is obviously something that the clubhouse is going to be very excited about. But on the other hand, too, Robbie Ray was apparently a big leader in that clubhouse, especially for the young pitchers. And now he's gone as a result of this deal. So it's a lot of give and take. And it's going to be interesting to see now who kind of takes on that leadership role, specifically from the pitching side of things, right? Because is that going to be Luis? I mean, that's the guy that you really look at first because he's the veteran in that club. Yeah, in that rotation. But
I bet on Logan Gilbert. I think it's Logan is the guy who steps up. But they could also go get somebody, and it's interesting.
I mean, maybe DeSclafani is a good leader. Yeah, maybe. We don't know.
He's definitely been around the block quite a bit. So we don't know enough about DeSclafani to know whether or not he can be that type of guy in that clubhouse. Not saying he can't be, but we just don't know. It is interesting though too, because we heard them kind of mentioned as being in on the Carlos Santana market. And what's one thing we know about Santana? Leadership. Like he fits in that clubhouse. That clubhouse loves him. They respect him. So he fits. And obviously we know the same thing about Haniger. So, it's the Mariners do value that, by the way, to some degree, like how things are in the clubhouse, that group, how they vibe and gel together. We've heard them not go after specific players because they didn't think that they would fit in that clubhouse. So they do value that to some degree. So I think that is a little bit in play here for Haniger, but you're not making this deal if you don't feel pretty confident that you have a plan where Haniger and DeSclafani can actually help you this year, because there's just no reason to. So while I do think that the leadership structure or that like clubhouse presence was a part of this decision making, it's not the biggest part. Like, again, they're not making this deal just for vibes, right? Like,
it's not a vibes deal. It's not a, hey, we've really pissed off the clubhouse, we need to bring in something that makes them happy.
Oh no, the season ticket sales are down a little bit, we need to go get busted Mitch Haniger to pump up our season ticket sale. No, it's a baseball move.
Because I know a lot of fans are very excited, us included, about Mitch coming back. I don't think that is going to have that kind of impact, right? Where it's like, oh, we're going to bring a ton of people back to the ballpark because we got Mitch back. Like, I don't think that's
no. This is a baseball move, and it does make good baseball sense. It's not a slam dunk. It just from pure baseball side of things, it's not a slam dunk. It's not, oh my god, this is like amazing. It's a good solid deal for both sides, and I think it benefits the Mariners more this year. And obviously the X factor here is the clearing of the money that Robbie Ray was probably going to opt into, is something that we can keep an eye on for next winter in case, this whole payroll thing becomes an issue again, which, judging by John Stan's history,
man, the Mitch Haniger for Robbie Ray trade next winter is going to go crazy.
Just trade him back.
They're just going to keep swap. This is like this is the Jacob Nottingham idea on steroids. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. But
you get the vision.
Yeah. So obviously, happy Mitch is back. I think there's a very specific role in mind for him. It's not going to be 106. We're counting on him for 145, 150 games. It's going to be, we think we can get 350 plate appearances out of him, playing a little bit of left, playing a little bit of right, DHing some. I think that's the plan for Haniger. And I think that this deal in totality makes a lot of sense for Seattle because they check out 2 boxes that they kind of needed to check off without adding any payroll to the mix. And I'm sure we're about to talk about that.
Dude, Mitch is back. That's so cool. Like that's I'm really excited about that. I love Mitch Haniger so much. I'm so glad. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what the circumstances are. Like I said, I'm just so thrilled to have Mitch back in a Mariners uniform. It just felt wrong seeing him in that Giants uniform last year. It just felt wrong. Very wrong and unnatural. So he's back home as he should be. All right. So we're going to talk about Anthony DeSclafani a little bit more, and then whatever else we get into in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, Sailors, the NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can also find bets in the new Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays. And with football coming to a close, you know what that means. Mariners baseball is almost here, folks, and so is betting on Mariners baseball. But while you wait for the boys to take the field, you can still bet on the Seahawks, Kraken, and Huskies basketball and football. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen after this wild and wacky and crazy, insane day that the Mariners have had here. Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander are hooping right now. They're going nuts right now. And it's not done. We're probably going to wait to record the Rayleigh episode if that does get finished today. Like, we're probably going to wait for the full details of that to come out before we hit record on that. So you might not see that for a few hours here. But I would assume, since Rosenthal has details about it and all this stuff, I feel like that's something that if it's going to get finished, it's going to get finished today at some point. So,
yes. Unless there's some kind of like medical like thing that pops up. But yeah, I would say that deal's going to get done in some form or fashion today or tomorrow.
Yeah. So look forward to that episode. Probably later today at some point, like I said. All right, so Anthony DeSclafani, very interesting because the Mariners had interest in DeSclafani a couple of years ago.
Same winter they had interest in Colton Wong.
What? Yeah. Let's not talk about that. The first question is Anthony DeSclafani the Colton Wong of pitchers, Colby? Kind of is. But
feels like a stretch, but okay.
Sure. But yeah, so what do we always say here on this podcast, right? Jerry and Justin love to circle back. They love to circle back. They don't get their guy one year. You better be sure they're going to get him sometime.
The other thing we like to say is that whenever the Mariners acquire a pitcher, pay attention. So,
yeah.
So this kind of knocks off 2 rules at once.
So DeSclafani has his own injury concerns, I guess I would say. 2022, he didn't pitch a lot. I don't know what the issue was there, actually. I need to look into that. 2023, though, he threw 99 and 2/3 innings. But his season was shortened due to an elbow thing. Now, it's not an elbow thing that required Tommy John or any sort of surgery, as far as I'm aware. I only did a brief search into that, but I don't think he's had any procedures done. I did see an article that said that he was expecting to have a normal off season, though. So it seems like he's healthy from that, but I have no way to confirm that. So we know what the practicality of him being in this trade is. But what's the practicality of him on this roster in particular, Colby?
To keep the Mitches in line.
Right.
So yeah, DeSclafani's interesting in the press release.
He's the gator of the team.
Sure. Yep. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. A
lot of ways to go. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
So DeSclafani's interesting. In the press release, Jerry talked about how they have a guy now who's got plenty of experience in the rotation and also out of the bullpen, kind of a swing guy. So that's a possibility. They could look at DeSclafani as a swing guy, which is interesting because he actually doesn't have a lot of experience out of the bullpen. He's pitched 11 games out of the pen. So it's not like he's, 50-50 or anything like that. So he's been a starter. I think what Jerry's saying is that we can use him as kind of like our sixth guy right now, and we can put him in the bullpen to start the year. And if we want to push Wu down to the minors, or we want to push Miller down to the minors, or we want to skip the start or whatever, right? Maybe we go with a 6-man rotation in April. DeSclafani can do that. And we think his stuff will play up in the bullpen a little bit. It's a pretty standard number 5 starter type of set here. It's a 2-seam fastball, 93 to 95 with some sink and a pretty good slider. He's basically going to live on what would be the outside corner to a righty. He's going to try and run that 2-seamer onto that corner, and he's going to try and run the slider off of that corner, and he's just going to do that back and forth. That's a lot of what DeSclafani does as a starter. Now, the last 2 years, you mentioned he had health issues. His last fully healthy year, he was actually really good. In San Francisco, he went 167 2/3, had a 152 strikeouts, a 1.09 whip, 3.17 ERA, 3.89 xERA. So the last time he was healthy, DeSclafani was actually like a number 4, like a legit number 4 starter. The slider still generated whiffs last year, so that's a good sign. What's interesting about DeSclafani, or at least what I found interesting about him, is, and this is, of course, his extension off the mound dipped significantly in 2023 from where it was in 2022 and 2021. So this is a guy who traditionally has been in the 70th percentile in extension, how far he gets down off the mound before he throws the ball. And this year he was closer to average. So now the difference between that doesn't look big, but if you're 93 to 94 and you can make that look 96, 97 with a little bit of extra extension, that's going to play up. You're going to miss more bats like that. So DeSclafani, to me, I think right now he'd be the number 6. So obviously if he's healthy, he's going to make your big league roster in some degree, unless they want to just eat the money, which, I mean, they could in theory. It's not like, it's not like that would hurt their payroll if they just DFA'd him. So they could in theory do that, but I think he's here to stay. I think he's going to get a good shot. I think we'll see if they trade Miller or Wu. You feel a little bit more comfortable with them doing that now, particularly if it's Wu, because you kind of have that number 5 now that you can start in DeSclafani. And again, they have to feel good about his health. Obviously, like if they had any questions about the health, I don't think they do this deal. Right. So I think they see DeSclafani as somebody who could actually help them. I think they see a small chance they can get him back to 2021 levels. And if you can, then what you actually have is a pretty valuable trade chip in July, whether you're in the race or not.
Right.
Because if DeSclafani's pitching pretty well and I get into July and I have Brian Wu and Emerson Hancock and they look like they're ready to go or whatever, I can now feel more comfortable trading one of them, or I could trade DeSclafani and get something back. So there's some value here. Again, I think you got to try and get the extension back out to where it was. It does seem like that is some kind of issue, because like the velocity is still fine. The break is relatively close. So there's no reason that he should be as bad as he was in 2023, unless there was an injury that was preventing him from like reaching his full potential. And since he missed half the year with an elbow issue, it's probably safe to say there was something. So DeSclafani's an interesting throw-in. I think we can look at him as a throw-in in this deal just to kind of even the money out a little bit. But there's some upside here, and there's some there should be some reason for optimism that the Mariners can get him back to at least what Marco Gonzalez was the last couple of years. And that type of innings eater actually does have value to this ball club.
I guess we're just going to kind of play the waiting game now on the Rayleigh deal. Figure out when that is, or, what that's going to look like, and, if that's going to be finalized today. And if it is, then we'll do a second show today, and you guys will get more of us. So we'll see you then. But for now, unless you have anything else to add, Colby.
I think maybe, just maybe,
okay. All right,
there might be a third deal today. Jerry, of course, he would wait till Friday afternoon to dump all this, but Jerry's cooking right now. And when Jerry cooks, he finds it hard to get out of the kitchen. So don't be surprised if there's a third deal today, if we even get the second deal. Like, that is not official yet. Let's be clear about that. As we are recording, the Rayleigh and Caballero deal is not done. We do not know what it looks like. We have no other details other than like they're discussing a trade that involves those two guys. So we'll see if the second one gets done.
If it is just Rayleigh and Cabby, though, I'm gonna need someone. I'm gonna need someone to edit Jerry and Justin's face on the Kobe and Shaq highlight reel, and post that on Twitter for me. Thank you, appreciate it.
Let Jerry cook. Let Jerry cook.
Yeah. All right, that's gonna do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.